You are listening to the Doug Hagmann Radio Show, weekdays 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And now the man behind the mic, a private investigator with over 30 years under his belt, Doug Hagmann.
Good morning, everyone. It's 6 a.m. on the west coast of America, 9 a.m. here in the east. Welcome to Hagmann. It's the Doug Hagmann Investigative Hour for today. It's Friday, September 28th, 2018. Thanks for joining me this morning. A day after the much-shown Kavanaugh hearings, wow, just an incredible display in Washington yesterday. I'm going to play one clip, of course, that being of Lindsey Graham. It's a short clip, but it's important. That's the only audio clip. I feel necessary. I feel it's necessary to play this as the springboard to what I will be getting into. Again, as I like to do in these programs, is to take many events, many situations, look at the different things that are taking place concurrently and how they're not being reported as tied together and tie them up when there is relationships between events, when it's necessary to do so. And at the end of the program, I'll show you how everything fits together. And of course, today we are in day 617 of the President Donald J. Trump's presidency. Day 500 of the special counsel, and we've got 39 days to go to the midterms. And this is what this is all about, the midterms, of course, and the future of President Trump, the future of this country, and the information I'm going to give to you today should absolutely astound you. Let me just whet your appetite with one thing. Did you know that of course, the largest protesting groups are the women's groups, the Women's March Partners. Remember, right after President Trump was elected and, of course, inaugurated, the Women's March, you saw that. Oh, nasty women. Well, did you know that 100 of the 544 Women's March Partners, that's 100 of these 544 known organizations, received $246,637,217 from George Soros or George Soros entities. Let me say that one more time and understand the magnitude of this. 100 of the 544 Women's March Partners received some $246.6 million from George Soros. You ask where this money's coming from? Well, there it is. I've got more information of this type today to tie up things and following the money. And you can see where things are, well, how things are being tied together, how there's a war by the left, by the Democratic Socialists, as I've talked about so much. But let's talk specifics. As I mentioned, I want to play that brief or that limited audio segment from Lindsey Graham. But I want to go to the transcript of Judge Brett Kavanaugh. Just one paragraph from the transcript, from his opening statement, that caught my attention. And I'm sure it caught yours as well. This is, not quite, well, about midway. Yeah, maybe a little bit more than midway through. When he stated, this whole 2-week effort, now these are Kavanaugh's words, this whole 2-week effort, meaning, of course, the allegations of sexual assault. This whole 2-week effort has been a calculated and orchestrated political hit, fueled with apparent pent-up anger about President Trump and the 2016 election. Fear that has been unfairly stoked about my judicial record. Revenge on behalf of the Clintons and millions of dollars in money from outside left-wing opposition groups. This is a circus. The consequences will extend long past my nomination. the consequences will be with us for decades. The grotesque character assassination will dissuade confident and good people of all political persuasions from serving our country, as we all know in the political system of the early 2000s, what goes around comes around. Okay. That paragraph is directly from Judge Kavanaugh, his opening statement. And I call your attention once again to that very interesting, deliberately inserted sentence there. This whole 2-week effort has been a calculated and orchestrated political hit, fueled with apparent pent-up anger about President Trump and the 2016 election, fear that has been unfairly stoked about my judicial record. Revenge on behalf of the Clintons and millions of dollars in money from outside left-wing opposition groups. Stop right there. What is he talking about? Really, virtually no one in the media focused on that one accusation by Brett Kavanaugh, saying this is funded. This is a left-wing, Democratic Socialist, politically funded hit job. The reason I wanted to play Lindsey Graham is it closely resembles, or it is very close to admitting exactly that. Lindsey Graham, who has been silent for how long now, when he and McCain were tied at the hip, and of course we talked about this last night on the flagship show, the Hagmann Report with Keith Hansen. All of a sudden, Lindsey Graham comes out swinging. But what's he swinging about? What's he saying? This anger, this pent-up anger from Lindsey Graham, uncharacteristic of the Lindsey Graham over the last couple of years, isn't it? Listen to what Lindsey Graham says. I'm not playing this for effect, but for the content. But consider the Lindsey Graham of a year ago, 2 years ago, to what you saw yesterday. And then tie it together with the statement that I just gave you, directly from Judge Kavanaugh's statement, opening statement. These two are definitely related. Go ahead and roll clip 1. This is Lindsey Graham from yesterday confirmation hearings.
Are you aware that at 9:23 on the night of July the 9th, the day you were nominated to the Supreme Court by President Trump, Senator Schumer said, 23 minutes after your nomination, "I will oppose Judge Kavanaugh's nomination with everything I have. I have a bipartisan, and I hope a bipartisan majority will do the same. The stakes are simply too high for anything less." Well, if you weren't aware of it, you are now. Did you meet with Senator Dianne Feinstein on August 20th?
I did meet with Senator Feinstein.
Did you know that her staff had already recommended a lawyer to Dr. Ford?
I did not know that.
Did you know that her and her staff had this allegations for over 20 days?
I did not know that at the time.
If you wanted an FBI investigation, you could have come to us. What you want to do is destroy this guy's life, hold this seat open, and hope you win in 2020. You've said that, not me. You've got nothing to apologize for. When you see Sotomayor and Kagan, tell them that Lindsey said hello, because I voted for them. I would never do to them what you've done to this guy. This is the most unethical sham since I've been in politics. And if you really wanted to know the truth, you sure as hell wouldn't have done what you've done to this guy. Are you a gang rapist?
No.
I cannot imagine what you and your family have gone through. Boy, y'all want power. God, I hope you never get it. I hope the American people can see through this sham, that you knew about it and you held it. You had no intention of protecting Dr. Ford. None. She's as much of a victim as you are. God, I hate to say it, because these have been my friends. But let me tell you, when it comes to this, you're looking for a fair process, you came to the wrong town at the wrong time, my friend. Do you consider this a job interview?
The advice and consent role is like a job
You
interview.
consider that you've been through a job interview.
I've been through a process of advice and consent under the Constitution. Which
Would you say you've been through hell?
I've been through hell and then some.
This is not a job interview.
Yeah.
This is hell.
This
is going to destroy the ability of good people to come forward because of this crap. Your high school yearbook. You have interacted with professional women all your life, not one accusation. You're supposed to be Bill Cosby when you're a junior and senior in high school. And all of a sudden you got over it. It's been my understanding that if you drug women and rape them for 2 years in high school, you probably don't stop. Here's my understanding. If you lived a good life, people would recognize it, like the American Bar Association has the gold standard. His integrity is absolutely unquestioned. He is the very circumspect in his personal conduct, harbors no biases or prejudices. He's entirely ethical, is a really decent person. He is warm, friendly, unassuming. He's the nicest person. The ABA. And one thing I can tell you, you should be proud of. Ashley, you should be proud of this. That you raised a daughter who had the good character to pray for Dr. Ford. To my Republican colleagues, if you vote no, you're legitimizing the most despicable thing I have seen in my time in politics. You want this seat? I hope you never get it. I hope you're on the Supreme Court. That's exactly where you should be. And I hope that the American people will see through this charade. And I wish you well, and I intend to vote for you, and I hope everybody who's fair-minded will.
All right. That was Senator Lindsey Graham, Senate Judiciary Committee, opining on the Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh yesterday, strongly opining. And obviously, that's been the focus. As some call it, a tirade, has been the focus of both conservative and liberal, conservative and progressive socialist commentary last night. Now, let's go beyond that for a little bit, because the anger, the righteous indignation shown by Lindsey Graham, uncharacteristic as to what we've seen. Why? What prompted that emotional outburst or that emotional delivery? What's behind that? And I would submit to you, the listener, that we are seeing elements of the non-existent conspiracy theory deep state. We're seeing elements of that being exposed and people jumping ship. And others saying, "Okay, well, the jig is up." You know, there's something going on behind that. So I didn't play that for effect. I didn't play that for a filler. When you combine Judge Kavanaugh's opening statement and the accusation, it's nothing less than an accusation of saying, "Look, this is a political hit job. It is well organized and well funded." This is what Judge Kavanaugh is saying, and then you hear the response, the emotional tirade of Lindsey Graham, uncharacteristic heretofore, at least of recent times. What's going on here? I like to look at what the backstory is. What's going on in the back rooms, in the cigar-filled, smoke-filled back rooms here? I would say this. As I mentioned, you've got George Soros, the poster child for the deep state, I suppose, the funder of many revolutions and counter-revolutions and whatever, funding a movement in the United States, beginning, obviously, a long time ago, but with respect to President Trump beginning in earnest with the Women's March, the Women's Movement, as I opened with. This, according to the Media Research Center, who it's a good friend of the show, good friend of the Hagmann Report, where it was disclosed that 100 of the 544 Women's March partners received $246+ million from Soros. Okay, what does that have to do with the current events? Because it's the same groups. The very same groups, and I said this from the beginning, the very same groups that you saw come out against President Trump as a candidate, but especially at and after, and well, during and after his inauguration, are the very same groups that are conspiring to take down the country. And they're the very same groups who are going after Judge Kavanaugh. And essentially all of the judicial appointments, there are 145 openings right now that are being filled. The focus is against the conservative appointments of conservative judges to these posts. But the big fish here is Judge Brett Kavanaugh. So if you deconstruct what happened with Christine Ford, and notice what, in particular, what was said by Lindsey Graham at the very beginning, where he said at 9:23, 23 minutes after nomination, Chuck Schumer came out and said, there's no way he's going to be nominated. I'm going to do everything in my power to stop this confirmation. It took all of 23 minutes for Schumer to do that. So you start putting these puzzle pieces together. All right, now hold that thought, because I'm going to take you to the present day. That, of course, is a reference to the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh and Chuck Schumer, his response to it 23 minutes later. Lindsey Graham knowing this and sharing this with Brett Kavanaugh saying, well, I didn't know that. Okay, I didn't know that. And then, of course, you had Lindsey Graham saying, did you know that on August 20th, Dianne Feinstein recommended to Dr. Christine Blasey Ford a lawyer, and that lawyer, of course, Deborah Katz, her law firm, the connections of the law firm to the Clintons. All right? Now, here's what we're looking at right now. Today, you've got the very people behind the attempted character assassination, or the attempt, or the method, or the activities to deny Judge Brett Kavanaugh the nomination. Their activities are being ratcheted up in the back rooms, in the back alleys, considering the eventuality of Judge Kavanaugh's appointment. They lost the battle yesterday. At least that's what they are saying among the message groups. They're saying this internally. They're saying, okay, we have to prepare for the eventuality of Judge Kavanaugh becoming the next member of the Supreme Court. This is what they're saying today. This is what the Soros-funded groups and others are saying today. Now, just follow me on this, because it's somewhat complicated. It's but not really, I suppose, when you get down to it. But there's this web of individuals and entities that we've identified as the enemy of the constitutional republic, who are working in opposition to the various interests of our country. One, of course, as I mentioned yesterday, is a guy by the name of Brian Fallon. And it's interesting that what we're seeing today, and again, this all relates, this all connects together. You just have to penetrate the web of connections and rather incestuous relationships. But Brian Fallon is the former press secretary on Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign. watch what he's saying. Okay, now he's active in the anti-Judge Kavanaugh, or he's against the confirmation process, and he's working behind the scenes. He and the organizations surrounding him working behind the scenes, not just to stop Judge Kavanaugh, but once considering the eventuality that he is placed on the court, he will continue to work to impeach Judge Kavanaugh. You might say, well, good luck with that. It's not going to happen. Well, okay, look what's going on with the special counsel with President Donald Trump. Again, this is why I mentioned the day count. It's day 500 of the special counsel. Donald Trump had 117 days of unfettered power or unfettered activity in the White House. That was until May 17th, 2017, when the special counsel was appointed. And from that point on, there's been a campaign of obstruction against Donald Trump. Well, the same thing is going to take place with the Supreme Court. And what I'm telling you as well, and this would be a good time to toss this out there, we are seeing this happen to us in the new media and to us individually. If you are a conservative and you're a Christian conservative, please, I cannot stress this enough. This will happen to you on a smaller or less obtuse scale, less vigorous scale, I suppose. But nonetheless, it will happen to you. This is why I'm warning you right now. All right, you've got, and it may not be the same people going after you. You may just be caught up in the crowd, but they will come after you. This is why I'm saying this is personal to each and every one of us. If you look at the attacks against us, if you look at the attacks against InfoWars, against other platforms, they're coming for all of us. Please understand that. I'm not trying to be hyperbolic here. I'm not trying to claim victim status. I'm just sounding the alarm bell. I'm sounding the warning right now. Please understand what's happening here. The next step, and you can find this at the Daily Caller, again, good friend of the Hagmann Report, good friend of this show, good friend of ours, and the Daily Caller, where you've got Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh will face more political attacks from the left, even if he is confirmed. And how is that possible? Well, there are some Democratic socialists are promising to investigate Brett Kavanaugh if in November they retake the Congress. And what they're planning on is impeachment of not just President Trump, but impeachment of Brett Kavanaugh. And again, you might say, well, good luck with that. How is that even possible? Oh, don't be so hyperbolic. Don't be so, I mean, come on. No, this is what they are planning. Just as I've warned you before, I'm warning you now. The political attacks, the personal attacks, the accusations, and the working toward dragging or total destruction, they're not going to stop. When you look at what happened, and as mentioned by Lindsey Graham, and as mentioned via Kavanaugh's personal statement, there is an organized, concerted effort to take down, to rip down, to tear down our republic. Now, obviously, Brett Kavanaugh faced this onslaught of attacks from Democratic socialists, these activists, even before Ford accused him of sexual improprieties 36 years ago. Ford coming out was just one of many artillery shells. One of many. And if you think Dianne Feinstein cares about protecting Christine Ford or cares about Ford, you get another thing coming. She doesn't. They don't. These people are political pawns. And this is what Lindsey Graham was saying in that statement. And this is what Judge Kavanaugh recognizes. What, have you asked yourself why? Why is Judge Kavanaugh such a threat to these individuals? Why is there such a pushback? Is it simply because this is a political obstructionist move? No. What did Kavanaugh say in the statement? He said this is an orchestrated political assassination attempt, a larger takedown, a conspiracy. This is what he was saying in his opening statement. And Graham recognized and echoed that very same sentiment. Now, you're not going to hear this in the media. You're going to hear, wow, look at Graham. He's, that meltdown he had, basically sticking up for Kavanaugh. But they're not looking deeper than that. That's surface level analysis. The deeper analysis here is really what Judge Kavanaugh knows. Don't forget, he was part of Washington. He's been part of the system inside the beast, working inside the beast for 30 years, 25 years. If you go ahead and look at his opening statement, he provides his CV, his resume. Look at what he's done. So he knows about the existence of the deep state. He knows about these things. Plus, he's a constitutional conservative. At least that's how he's being presented and how he presents himself. One might argue certain fine points. I understand that. With respect to the Patriot Act, I fully understand that. But he represents a danger to the deep state, and that's why they're fighting so hard against Judge Kavanaugh. And that's why Lindsey Graham had this tirade. The two are connected, I'm telling you, because of the exposure and the incremental exposure that we're seeing right now of the deep state. Look, you got Jason Chaffetz writing a book titled The Deep State. You've got people talking about the deep state, but some of these are at surface level only. I'm not saying that about the book by Jason Chaffetz. It's a good book, very good book. But what I'm saying is, there's some are just playing lip service to tickle the ears of the conservatives out there. This is not the case. Brett Kavanaugh represents a clear and present danger to the existence and the operation of the deep state. So, you've got Brian Fallon, who is a Clintonite, again, that former press secretary, who is organizing these. Well, he's the head of a group called Demand Justice. This, as defined by the Daily Caller now, is a Democratic or Democratic Socialist, a dark money group dedicated to opposing Kavanaugh's confirmation. So you remember Brian Fallon and remember Demand Justice. Brian Fallon heads Demand Justice. Now, if you look at, for example, what Brian Fallon admitted yesterday at 7:16 p.m. yesterday, Brian Fallon sent a tweet out saying, if Senate GOP ignores Dr. Blasey Ford and tries to muscle an attempted rapist onto the Supreme Court. Now, obviously, notice the language there, but put that aside for a moment. Number one, he says, they will pay dearly this November. Number two, senators up in 2020, and he specifically names two, Collins and Gardner, and the rest, et al., will feel intense heat for the next 2 years. And number three, pay attention to this now, Kavanaugh will not serve for life. What does that mean? Again, this is 7:16 p.m. yesterday. All right. You've got a number of Democratic socialists already promising to investigate Kavanaugh if they retake Congress, even if he's on the Supreme Court. How can that possibly happen? Well, it can, and believe me, if the GOP loses power, I don't want to even say the conservatives because really we're not seeing conservatives much. But if the GOP loses power, I promise you, all hell will break loose inside the Beltway and inside these various committees. You're going to see, suddenly, you're going to see all of the questions and investigations about Hillary, about the machinations of Rosenstein and others, and McCabe, all that. You're going to see that immediately tanked. Then there will be some other things that will happen, but you've got Rhode Island Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. What a name, right? You heard him yesterday on the Senate Judiciary Committee, who said this: as soon as we get power, as soon as Democrats get the gavel, he said, we are going to reopen this investigation. He said this as well: this is such a bad practice that even if they were to ram this guy through, meaning Kavanaugh, under the Supreme Court, as soon as Democrats get gavels, we're going to want to get to the bottom of this. So to me, that's a threat. You've got a threat here. Now, and I could go on with this. For example, and I will to a limited extent here, you've got California Democratic Representative Ted Lieu saying, well, I might need a little bit more information before weighing in on his impeachment. But you've got a group of these Democratic socialists who are meeting, and I'm telling you this because I've seen the anecdotal evidence, I guess. I wasn't there, but I've seen enough to report that the Democratic socialists in Congress and those who support them monetarily, they are receiving their marching orders by their paymasters. This is what you will do. You've got, for example, and this I'm citing the Daily Caller now, you've got liberal activists and journalists working together predicted that a push to impeach Kavanaugh, if he is confirmed and the Democrats retake Congress, you've got them all talking in the same language. You've got the media now involved as well. Eric Boehlert looking forward to Kavanaugh impeachment hearings next year. So you've got Eric Boehlert, for example, saying, okay, yeah, let him in. When the Democrats retake power, we're going to conduct impeachment hearings. But where is this coming from? Let's go deeper into this. And let's understand why South Carolina Republican Senator Lindsey Graham condemned the Senate Judiciary Committee's the Democrats' handling of the confirmation process. As you heard, he said, what you want to do is destroy this guy's life, hold the seat open, and hope you win in 2020. And I'm throwing this in 2018 in the midterms, of course. And he said, this is the most unethical sham since I've been in politics, which is a lot to say, given the time he's been in politics. And I should note that 3 of the 11 members on the Senate Judiciary Committee were there back in 28 years ago, back in 1991, during the Anita Hill, Clarence Thomas hearings. Isn't it interesting? It's kind of boy, you talk about a position for life, there it is. But what you saw yesterday was I believe, was a rare glimpse into the exposure of the deep state by members who have been, by at least one member who's been relatively ambivalent until now. And I'm referencing Senator Graham. And what you saw as well, as I mentioned, a very rare but very important exposure, admission, accusation about the existence of a deep state, about Hillary Clinton, and about the knee-jerk reaction and the attempt to destroy President Trump. This in a statement from, the opening statement from Brett Kavanaugh. One more time, I'll say this again. Even with the coverage by Fox News and Laura Ingraham and Tucker Carlson and others, you're not going to get the depth of analysis and really to the depth, the level of what's really taking place here. Sure, they're going to play Lindsey Graham ad nauseum. They're going to cite the opening statements, the good parts, shall we say, of the opening statement of Brett Kavanaugh. They're going to show the fiery exchanges. But they're not going to get into the depth that we're getting into and the reasons for this. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't tell you right now, the Senate Judiciary Committee is reconvened. The Democrats, just for an update here, the Democrats are calling to subpoena a witness named Mark Judge. Of course, Mark Judge was the other alleged co-conspirator that was in the on-premise, allegedly, as involved in that alleged attack by Judge Kavanaugh 36 plus years ago. Now, Mark Judge, of course, had late last night sent a correspondence to the Senate Judiciary Committee saying, look, I'm a recovering alcoholic. I've got medical problems. I've got all these other problems. I can't offer any additional information. He said, basically, the incident that's being discussed, I have no knowledge of. End of story. And I swear under the penalty of a felony. Interesting use of the phrase, but nonetheless, it was used throughout the day yesterday. But you have Mark Judge saying, look, I don't know anything about this. Leave me the hell alone. I have no idea about this. So right now, as I am speaking to you, and this could change throughout this program, but the Senate Judiciary Committee is demanding, Blumenthal, for one, is demanding that the Senate Judiciary Committee subpoenas Mark Judge. So that's kind of an update in real time. Very interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how the vote turns out. My prediction, and my predictions have been off, but I do believe that he'll clear the committee. Obviously, that's kind of a given, and ultimately will be nominated or will be confirmed onto the Supreme Court next week. That's kind of where I'm looking. Of course, who knows? Things could change in a heartbeat. But just to give you an update in real time, this is what's happening right now with the Senate Judiciary Committee. You've got the calls to subpoena Mark Judge and others, by the way. Why the delay? This is a attempted delay tactic, because they know, the Democratic Socialists know, that they need more time, that they cannot afford to allow this to go forward. But the contingency, as I mentioned earlier, connecting the dots, the contingency plans are in place. Should he become confirmed, they already have the contingency plans in place, and they're well funded, and this will be a forever assault against not just President Trump, but a forever assault against this specific Supreme Court justice. And to bring it back around, the reason I'm passionate about this, these assaults, these attacks are happening to all of us in the new media who are standing for standing for the right thing and exposing the deep state. And they will happen to you. That's why I've been saying this will become personal to you. Maybe not at the, and certainly not at the, in our case or in your case, not at the level of Kavanaugh, but the template is the same. It's already happening to us. It's already happening to Jones. It's in other platforms and other people who are influencers of public opinion. Soon, as your influence, you the listener, as your influence grows on social networking, it will happen to you. And this is why we've got to fight while we still can, while we still have a voice, because once our voices are silenced, what do we do then? And I'm not talking about simple banning, but I'm talking about legally silenced or under the legal framework. And that's happening. Lawfare, for example, that's happening. And spurious allegations, ridiculous allegations of improprieties. Oh, for example, Hagmann and others. Oh, they're money launderers. They're this. They're that. They're as ridiculous as all of this is. They don't have to prove anything. Christine Ford, Judge Kavanaugh, he attempted to rape me. Again, where's the proof? The absence of proof is meaningless at this point. Accusations are made and are being made every single day. Why? It's the politics of personal destruction. Please hear me when I tell you, again, I'm not trying to make this about me or us. And I'm telling you, you will be victimized by this at some level. That's why I'm passionate. And that's why I'm sounding the warning bell. And I have been sounding the warning bell now for a couple of years, 5, 6 years. Because it's happening now. It's happening now to us and soon to you. So, okay. Again, getting deeper into this. And by the way, let me point something else out here. The media, the corporate media. You know, we've talked and talked and talked about this. You know the corporate media. You know, of course, they're biased against conservatives. But when you break this down, if you go to newsbusters.org, you can see this. The network news burying key Kavanaugh facts. There was a study or a research done, surveillance done of the media between September 13th and September 24th. You look at the network media. 14 minutes or 4.1% of the coverage was on the denials, Kavanaugh's denials. A mere 1.6% of the coverage covered the witnesses don't confirm Ford's accusations. Only 12 seconds discussed Ford's politics. Ooh, a third rail in this particular situation. When you look at the coverage of Ford's lack of confirming witnesses, the character witnesses, and politics, my goodness. The whole story, the narrative is being, the facts are being buried by the mainstream media. And of course, you know this, but I just wanted to give you those numbers. 12 seconds dedicated across all networks, 12 seconds about the accuser's political persuasions or biases. 12 seconds. You've got in most cases, 94 or 95.9% of the coverage talking about the accusations, but only 4.1% or 14 minutes dedicated to the denials by Judge Kavanaugh. That's a takeaway for you. I just wanted to throw that in there before I forgot. But again, that's important. And you can go to newsbusters.org to find the coverage facts. Very interesting. And to be clear, I mentioned about the Senate Judiciary Committee meeting today. The committee will vote on the Kavanaugh nomination at 1:30 today, Eastern Time. That's 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I don't foresee any problem with this nomination vote, this procedure vote, obviously, given the balance of the Senate Judiciary Committee membership, Democrats versus Republicans. The majority, of course, going to vote for nomination, just a simple majority, and that'll take it to, of course, the Senate. But the vote is going to take place at 1:30. And as I mentioned before, right now they're talking about Mark Judge and other witnesses. The Democrats, this last-minute Hail Mary attempted, let's get other witnesses in here. That's what's going on right now. So, I'm just putting this out there for you. Okay, I want to get back into Demand Justice and Brian Fallon. Just so you know, Demand Justice is behind a lot of these initiatives. They're like this nucleus that's spawning off other groups. But Demand Justice is an advocacy group. It was created in January, February of 2018. And its purpose is to influence the political leanings. This is specifically against or influence America's court system by supporting the appointment of liberal judicial nominees. And anyone who is conservative, they immediately go into attack mode. This is Demand Justice. Now, the organization itself, how they operate is through media campaigns, and they focus upon unconfirmed judicial nominees, as we saw with Brett Kavanaugh. Now, Demand Justice is a project of 1630 Fund. Remember that as well, 1630 Fund. Now, that's a 501c4 social welfare organization, which is a larger nucleus of similar groups. Again, 1630 Fund. Write that down. Now let's talk about 1630 Fund, because this organization is a very low-profile group, and when you compare them with other groups, their online presence consists of a simple one-page website. They've got no social network page, no Facebook page, no Twitter account. They operate far under the radar. The 1630 Fund has received little, scant news coverage in the past couple of years. This is founded, my goodness, it was founded back in 2008. Notice the dates, the years. What happened in 2008? Obama happened in 2008. But anyway, the 1630 Fund, the group itself, the mission statement is to promote social welfare by conducting public education, advocacy, and other campaigns to support progressive politics. Let me translate that for you. It's a socialist organization. What do? They operate quietly, using money, their funds, to provide grants to other socialist organizations. For example, in 2015, the 1630 Fund provided millions in grants to 29 different organizations. That year, the largest grant in 2015. The largest grant then by the 1630 Fund exceeded, well, it was almost $2 million. It was $1.9 million and change. That went to the League of Conservation Voters Education Fund. Well, don't get lost here, too lost in the details. That's the educational arm of the League of Conservation Voters, which is an organization activating and rallying environmentalists to political activism. Now, who is the present person behind the 1630 Fund? Guy by the name of Eric Kessler, like the whiskey. Eric Kessler. He's also the founder and principal of Arabella Advisors, which is a social justice investment firm. That's my term. Now, they keep, again, 1630 Fund, which is the parent, I suppose, of the Demand Justice Group, of which Brian Fallon I mentioned. But the 1630 Fund is very active in the larger political realm, where demand justice goes directly to the court system, changing the court, attempting to put the courts into a socialist mode. So the 1630 Fund is the umbrella, in the Demand Justice Group is the lower group, shall we say. But when you look at Eric Kessler, for example, he's a former Clinton administration environmental policy staffer. Why are all of these people former Clinton people? Well, do you see what would have happened had Clinton won the presidency? I'm just saying. The Washington Free Beacon, in commenting about the funding of the 1630 Fund, stated that the 1630 Fund received nearly $1 million. It was $860,000 to be exact, from 4 labor unions during calendar years 2015 and 2016, including the AFL-CIO and National Education Association. And they received, the 1630 Fund also received over $4.5 million from Atlantic philanthropic groups. Sorry about that. This was a Bermuda-based enterprise that funded progressive organizations. Who else funds the 1630 Fund? Oh, I'm sure you know. The Tides Foundation, leading back to Soros. You getting tired of this guy yet, Soros? You should be. I know I am. So that gives you an idea of what's behind, or who's behind, demand justice. But let's get back to demand justice. They're a relatively new organization. As I said, 1630 Fund founded in 2008, Demand Justice 10 years later, this year, February of 2018. 1630 Fund, the umbrella, Demand Justice, is going toward is looking at the court system here in America, the judicial nominees. And it was in May of 2018 when they launched their first media campaign against Thomas Farr, who was President Donald Trump's nominee for the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of North Carolina. And in 2018, they began this campaign, and you might remember this. It was called Ditch the List. The Demand Justice began this campaign in June of this year that targeted potential Supreme Court nominees to replace outgoing Justice Anthony Kennedy. At that time, remember when Amy Barrett was kind of the odds-on favorite? Well, the campaign specifically focused on Amy Barrett. Now, Amy Barrett, of course, is a judge currently on the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals. But at the same time, they hedged their bets by going by campaigning against Brett Kavanaugh. All right. So what happened? Kavanaugh was the selection. But Demand Justice, in their anticipation of the announcement of President Trump's July 2018 nominee, they launched a campaign aimed at Senator Susan Collins from Maine, the Republican from Maine, to vote against any nominee from Donald Trump's shortlist. Okay. And their leverage there claimed that Senator Collins must vote against any nominee in order to preserve her stance on reproductive rights. Oh, my goodness. And now we see Planned Parenthood coming into this whole thing. Okay. Now, when you saw the protesters outside of the halls, outside of where the center, the Supreme Court, they were meeting on September 4th when Joe and I were in Washington. It was Demand Justice. There was that organization that organized these these protests against the hearings. And remember the protesters? They were dressed as handmaids. That was a reference to the 1985 book A Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, where women are denied basic freedoms. Now, because I'm looking at the clock here, I'm running out of time. Go back to the Women's March on Inauguration Day. Do you see do you see how this is all connected now? And one thing that Keith Hansen mentioned yesterday, and I missed this completely. Alyssa Milano, the actress and I used to like that show. My goodness, with Tony Danza. Who's the Boss? Back in the 80s. But Alyssa Milano was present in the hearing room. She was a guest of one of the senators. I think it might have been Feinstein. And if I'm wrong on that, I'm sorry. But nonetheless, do you see how all of this is connecting together? We are now, and at least this show, what I'm attempting to do is identify the players here and connecting the dots. These now, I'm telling you, the 1630 Fund, Demand Justice, which is the weaponized arm to go against the judicial nominees, that process. Brian Fallon, connected to Hillary Clinton and her organization. Demand Justice as well, connected to the Clintons. Do you see how all of this is coming together? And it was on the 1st of August of this year when Demand Justice announced the start of its Rise Up for Roe. It was a tour that began August 11th in D.C. and spread to New York and Boston, Denver, and such. The speakers, aside from Cecile Richards and Senator Elizabeth Warren, Alyssa Milano. That's right. And you see her in the background of this hearing. The nucleus of this is the judicial arm, the weaponizing against the judicial nominees. But this is heavily involved in the pro-infanticide movement. And then you've got Samantha Bee, of course, on the entertainment side, and others, including Jimmy Kimmel and others within the entertainment industry, who are operating as activists for these groups, but not naming specifically these groups. So what I'm trying to tell you is this. You had the statement by Judge Kavanaugh. Judge Kavanaugh knows exactly who is against him. Exactly. I brought that out at the beginning. You had Lindsey Graham going off the rails by some, saying, okay, man, he was really out there. The two are related. Lindsey Graham is exposing now what he, for reasons, maybe it was McCain, I don't know, the influence, but now he's exposing the deep state, the orchestration of all of this. Look, Judge Kavanaugh knows the deal. Ford, of course, is a pawn, as well as Ramirez and Avenatti, of these groups, including Demand Justice. Keep your eye on this group. I'm going to have more for you as programs continue. Thank you so much for listening. Please, if you like what you hear, please share this among others. Doug Hagmann Radio Show, #DHRS. May God bless you. See you next time.
The Doug Hagmann Radio Show is brought to you by the Hagmann Report. Tune in to the Hagmann Report weekdays, 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. For more information, go to HagmannReport.com. That's HagmannReport.com.